Hello, everyone. Are St. Courts tight? Are you wondering if you should roll? Are you on the fence, but you're just not sure? Do you wonder if this servant's good enough to roll? Or are you just trying to scratch that itch? Are you unable to decide? Well, allow me to offer you some information to help you make that decision. Welcome, everyone, to the Gacha Guide. This will be mainly gameplay information. As always, I do suggest rolling with your heart. But there's no shame in wanting to roll for a strong servant, right? So today's topic servant is the Queen Regent of the Assyrian Empire herself, Semiramis. We will be covering her stats, her deck and her NP, her passives, her skills, her material costs for said skills, and comparing her to any servants of the same class or who have a similar role. If you decide you should roll for her, we'll also cover her skill priority for leveling, what CEs to equip to her, what servants are good to group with her, and we'll go over just some basic how to use her, some general tips. So without any further ado, let's jump right into her stats. Semiramis is a 5-star AoE assassin class servant, meaning that she is strong against riders and weak against casters. She has 11,309 attack at level 90, not counting additional foes, obviously, which is the second highest for any AoE assassin, just barely being beaten by Shuten Doji. Do remember, though, that as an assassin, she has a 0.9% class modifier on that damage, so we can effectively adjust it to about 10,178. Her HP at 90 is quite high, actually, 13,266, maybe a little below average for 5 stars, but a little above average for most assassins that are dealing damage. Overall, her base stats are kind of middling, but when compared to other assassins, she does have some of the better stats available. Moving on to her hidden stats, these show that her NP gain per hit is kinda low, unfortunately only down here at the 0.39%. That's actually extremely low. Luckily, if we look at her cards, her quick card has 4 hits, her arts card has 4 hits, her buster has 4, her extra has 5, and her noble phantasm has 5. Each of these cards has a decent hit count, which helps mitigate that very low gain. Her star weight, aka how easily she gains crit stars to use on her cards, is 102. Again, this is around average, maybe a little above average, so she's decent, but not amazing. So getting crit stars onto her isn't the hardest, it's not the easiest. Her star creation rate, 24.7%, this is amongst the highest in the game. This is extremely high. Unfortunately, she only has 1 quick card to work with, so often enough, she's not going to be making nearly as many stars as you would hope for her to be able to with such an incredibly high star rate. Now let's look on to her deck and her noble phantasm. So, like I said, her deck contains 1 quick card, we have 3 arts cards, and a single buster card. Having these 3 arts cards allows her to easily achieve arts chains, focuses her style on getting her MP charged, and firing her MP off. While her base MP gain per hit is low, she does have passives and skills to help facilitate this playstyle and make up for the fact that she has these 3 arts cards. Now, as for her Noble Phantasm, this is the Hanging Guards of Babylon, Aerial Garden of Vanity. This is an AoE Buster Noble Phantasm with 5 hits on it. It'll do damage to all enemies from 300 to 500%, and increases the party's defense by 20%, for 3 turns. This will also increase her MP damage for 1 turn before firing based on her overcharge between 10 to 50%. This is pretty good overall, it's not bad at all. The extra damage from the overcharge is very nice, and it'll always get off at least in 10% extra. And the defense up for the party helps a lot in those longer fights if you are going to take her into a more challenging fight. Eventually, there will be a strengthening that comes out, and then her MP will become just a little bit better. It will then further increase her damage by 100% at all levels, and give a bonus buff removal resistance of 100% for 1 turn for all allies. This takes the MP from okay to quite good. Very good, even. The damage boost helps her with being able to clear things a lot more easily and work even better in those longer fights. And the buff removal resist, it's alright. A lot of enemies aren't going to try to remove your buffs, but for those fights where they will, this is actually quite a blessing to have. Next up, let's move on to her passives. So, first off, she has Presence Concealment C+, increasing her critical star drop rate by 6.5%. Again, only one quick card to take advantage of that. It's not her main focus. We move on to what her actual main focus is with Territory Creation EX. Her arts card effectiveness has been increased by 12% with this passive. This is great with her 3 arts cards deck and allows her playstyle to work well with firing off MPs. Item Construction C, increased debuff success rate by 6%. This is going to help out with one of her skills, which is going to help out with her damage overall. And finally, Divinity C, damage plus 150. It's just a little extra boost. Nothing major. The big thing is definitely Territory Creation. This is very much built into what her playstyle actually is and helps facilitate it greatly. Now let's hit her skills. So, Semiramis' skills. First off, we have Familiar Pigeon. This is an NP charge between 20 and 30% based on level, along with inflicting a debuff resist down on all enemies between 30 and 50% for 1 turn. The self-MP charge is always nice to have on any servant, and 30% is enough that you can stick an event CE with a 50% MP starting gauge, and combine her with many different supports that can give that extra 20 for an easily achievable 100%. The secondary effect of decreasing the debuff resist will help make her debuffs hit even more often, so it synergizes well with her. At a base charge of 7 turns for the charge time, and 5 turns at level 10 as it goes down, this is relatively often usable. If you're in a longer fight, you're going to get this off 2, maybe even 3 times, depending on how hard the fight is. Next up, we have Double Summon. This increases her MP gain by 20 to 40% based on level for 3 turns, and negates class affinity against casters for 3 turns, which is the interesting one. So first off, having the MP gain means that her low base NP gain isn't that awful, as during these 3 turns, that combined with Territory Creation EX means that she can actually gain quite a lot of charge off of her arts cards. She can very easily, with an arts chain, pretty much hit herself up to 100% from almost nothing. The secondary effect is very nice. If you ever have a fight against a rider that has some casters along with them, Semiramis suddenly becomes one of the best units in the entire game to use, as she will deal and take only 1 times damage against casters while this is up. That means her damage is going to be normalized, and the damage she takes will be normalized. This is, again, fantastic if you are in any of those more difficult challenge fights that happens to have a situation like this. The cooldown, once more, base charge time of 7 that goes down to 5, giving it an effective 2-turn cooldown, making it really good for those longer fights. And finally, we have her third skill, Alcohol of the Arrogant King. This requires 8 critical stars to be used in the first place, a pretty rough demerit. However, it will inflict between 500 and 1,000 poison damage to all enemies over 3 turns. It decreases their buster card resist between 30 to 50%, which is the big one, for 3 turns. Now, seeing as her MP is a buster card, this skill is basically like saying make her MP do 50% bonus damage at max level, which is, of course, a great way to increase your damage, isn't it? So combining this with her Double Summon, her Territory Creation EX, her 3 arts cards, this can usually allow her to get off 2 Noble Phantasms while this Alcohol of the Arrogant King debuff is on top of enemies. It does have an 8-turn cooldown, going to 6 at maximum decrease, so an effective cooldown of only 3 turns, which makes it Again, quite good for those more challenging fights. You can see kind of a pattern here with how I'm rating her skills and talking about them. So, these skills are pretty good overall. Well, what are the materials we need to level them? Well, luckily for us, her skills aren't too costly to level. In total, she will take 36 stingers, she will take 36 dragon fangs, 20 phoenix feathers, and 10 spirit runes, along with your standard affair for an assassin. Overall, that's pretty cheap. That's pretty standard. Considering this is a 5-star servant, that's really good. Some 5-star servants out there take, I don't know, 100 plus of a certain material. I'm still farming for a Reshkagul. Anyway, so how does Semiramis stack up against other servants of her class? Well, the only other AoE 5-star assassins we have are Shuten Doji and Cleopatra. Shuten is less focused on the raw damage output from her noble Phantasm, and is more about applying debuffs onto enemies, and a little bit of damage over time. So Semiramis kind of outputs her in the terms of dealing damage when it comes to her MP, but also has overall better MP generation for herself, making it easier to fire her MP off. Cleopatra has sort of a similar role to Semiramis, and even some relatively similar skills. The difference being that Cleopatra is focused on being a bit tankier, while Semiramis is focused on dealing a bit more damage. Semiramis also, again, has better tools for gaining her MP and firing her MP off a little bit more often. As it stands, Semiramis kind of outperforms the both of them in terms of performing what her job is. She kind of stacks up to be the best AoE 5-star assassin when it comes to dealing damage, and she's great for longer fights due to the NP granting a defense boost and her ability to negate caster deficiencies. Comparing her to the rest of the AoE assassins, she may not generate as many stars as others such as Fuma Kotaro or Skaha Summer, but what she does have over them is, again, a lot more upfront damage and a decent ability to tank through stuff. Now, if we were to compare her to maybe some of the alter egos, the only other AoE alter egos currently in the game are Kiara. Oh man, Abby, let's put you up the front. There you go. Kiara here, and Passion Lip. So, when it comes to comparisons against Kiara, I'm going to have to say Kiara just does outperform Semiramis a bit. Kiara is a very, very powerful servant. She has great NP gain, looping, etc., which outperforms Semiramis in that way. She has a little bit less upfront damage, but a little more tankability, and again, a little easier on getting those NPs off multiple times. Passion Lip, on the other hand, Semiramis definitely outperforms in the damage department. Passion Lip is more of a tanky character, and in general, tanks aren't quite as desirable as having something that just deals upfront damage. So while Kiara may do a little bit better than Semiramis, she does have the different class, and if you need that class advantage, Semiramis is the way to go. So, as for my personal opinion here, I think Semiramis is the best AoE 5-star assassin in the game. She is great for both farming and challenge quests. Her best competition is a 4-star that's not going to come out until later on in summer, and is going to require Scotty to be able to compete with her. And the next AoE alter ego to come out and try and compete with her is Maji no Kitasoji, and let's just say it's not much of a competition. Semiramis easily wins. There hasn't been another AoE 5-star assassin released since Semiramis on JP, so if you have any desire for a good AoE assassin, then Semiramis is pretty much going to be your best bet for a fairly long time. Now, if I have convinced you and you have rolled for Semiramis, what skills take priority here? Which ones should you level up? Well, her first skill, being able to charge her up to 30%, I'd say generally takes the priority. The NP gain from 20 to 30 is pretty nice to have, but Even lowering enemy debuff resist is really great to have an increase for landing her third skill onto enemies. If you have a kaleidoscope or maybe a max limit broken imaginary element, you can leave this lower at around 6 to have an easy 100% charge. So, you know, there's a bit of flexibility there depending on your CE availability. The next highest priority, or if you want to hold off on the first skill, definitely her third skill, without a doubt, 100%. 50% Buster resistance down for 3 turns is massive. This not only increases her damage greatly for her MP, it of course helps out any allies with their own Buster cards, whether they be NPs or otherwise. Her second skill you can leave pretty low. No matter what, you're going to negate the class affinity against Caster for 3 turns, even at level 1, and that's probably the bigger helping point out of this second skill. So, this one, easily the lowest on the totem pole for priority. Now, what craft essences should you equip to her? So, let's start off with craft essences for farming. If you just need to get her MP off real easily, then of course you have something like a kaleidoscope or an imaginary element. I forgot to put that up. As I said before, if you just need to fire off a quick NP, you're doing some really fast farming, these are the go-to CEs to go for, because they either start you with an 80% charge, or 80 to 100%, or 60 to 75. Now, if you need a little bit more damage, then the CEs you want to focus on are those that will either increase your attack, your buster, your MP damage, and generally you want to have some starting charge. So, Golden Sumo Tournament has a 15% attack up, 50% starting gauge. If you have that CE from the previous event, this is great for it. We have Aerial Drive, which is a 10% buster up, 10% MP strength up, and 50% starting gauge. If you have that from the last Halloween event, then that's great. If you don't have it yet, the upcoming Halloween rerun will give you a chance at it. If you have First Sunrise, it is a 20% buster up and 50% starting gauge. These are all considered max limit broken, by the way, which is quite good. And finally, Partake with the King, a 15% buster up and 60% starting gauge. All of these options give you a nice damage boost. They give you a good starting charge to make it easy to reach your NP as quickly as possible. And, I mean, in general, have some pretty nice art. If you're going to, let's say, a more challenge quest, and it'll take you, and you're not just going to fire off an MP and be done with it, then some good CEs to think about are Little Halloween Devil. This is an older CE from an older Halloween event, which has a 25% NP gain up and a 60% starting gauge. And of course, Magical Girl of Sapphire with a 30% NP gain and 50% starting gauge. Both of these help you to reach a second, a third, a fourth, etc. Noble Phantasm used for those longer fights when you know you'll need to stay in for a while. She's not a great servant for trying to focus on crits. She doesn't have anything to increase her star weight or crit damage for herself, so focusing on getting her MP off more often helps out more for those challenge quests. Now let's talk about servants to group Semiramis with. As it is true with any damage-dealing servant, or servant you want to MP with in general, our first servant is, of course, Waver. Everyone loves Waver. He provides upwards of 50% MP charge, damage up, defense up, crit up, easy choice. Along with him, you have Hans, who is like a mini Waver, your free-to-play Waver. His NP can buff everyone with attack, defense, heal them, but he also has a nice little ability called Innocent Monster, which can generate up to 9 stars per turn, which can guarantee you can get off Semiramis' third skill no matter what. So he has that extra little functionality as a support for Semiramis that helps set him up a little better as a good choice. Of course, we have our familiar buster support Merlin with his very large damage increase and 20% charge to help her out. On top of that, if you're in a challenge fight, Merlin is of course one of the best choices, as his MP provides passive MP gen per turn, star gain per turn to help with the third skill, and healing. Helena Blavatsky provides you a slightly more free-to-play help, or a cheaper help, I should say, as a 4-star, 20% charge. Her third skill gives you all card buffs up, and her second skill allows you to gen 5 stars per turn, so it helps with Semiramis' third skill, much like Hans does, just not quite as good. And finally, William Shakespeare is a good choice as well. He has a 20% charge and a 40% buster buff for 1 turn, a bigger buster buff than other servants can provide, but again, just for 1 turn. But he's really nice for when you just need to reach a large spike for 1 good MP. Now, as for some basic use tips for this servant, you pretty much want to focus on getting her MP off as often as possible. That's what she is really set up to do. Like I said before, she doesn't have any star weight gain, she doesn't have any critical damage up or anything like that. She's an assassin, so her cards automatically have a 0.9% damage multiplier, so her cards aren't really the focus. It's all about that MP. Use your arch chains to get that MP. When you finally do have your MP ready to go for damage, lead with the Buster MP first, follow up with your arch cards or quick cards afterwards. Otherwise, you lead with arch cards, you get your better MP gen, and you get the MP off again and again and again, because that's what she's all about. Semiramis is a good MP servant. So, too long didn't watch? This is a good servant to roll for. I don't think she's 100% priority. I don't think that she's going to break the mold or set the meta, but she is the best 5-star AoE assassin in the game. One of, if not the best AoE assassin in the game pretty much, with very sparse competition in her role. She's fast at farming, with her self-charging skill. She's good even in challenge quests. And finally, of course, she has elf ears. Look at those elf ears. Who doesn't love elf ears? So, let me know your opinions on Semiramis. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to follow me on Twitch, where you can see these recorded live and watch FGO gameplay and other games. Join the Discord if you want to ask any questions that you may have, and of course, leave a like, a comment if you would, all that good stuff. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time on the next Gacha Guide. Elf ears!